Hello, friends. My name is Adam, and I am trying to be the most prolific reviewer of all time. And to do so, I need to review about 15,000 things. And usually I review movies because it's a lot easier to review movies than things that take a longer time, like television series. But I decided that I wanted a little break from movies and I wanted to watch just a classic sitcom. And one sitcom that I never got around to watching, although I always thought was an interesting premise, was Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt. So, if you don't know the premise of Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, it's about this character named Kimmy Schmidt who was abducted off of the street when she was in middle school and trapped in a bunker by a crazy guy played by John Hamm, actually, who named the Reverend, who believed that the world was going to end at a certain time, and the world didn't end at a certain time, but he kept the girls in the bunker anyway. And so the actual sitcom is the consequences, the repercussions of that on Kimmy's life as she tries to succeed in New York. So that's the premise, and when it came out, it was considered to be the first the best sitcom to come out of the streaming era. And while it does, because it was produced by Netflix, so while it does have a lot of positives, and I'll talk about the positives later, I'd say ultimately I didn't like it. I thought that it really dragged towards the end. And instead of being about Kimmy's sort of adaptation and coming to terms with the world that she hasn't known for 20 years, it's it's just and then kind of plot development. So this happens, and then 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 this happens. So that's the biggest problem, and it really drags towards the end, and actually it kind of ruins Kimmy's character because Kimmy has like these love interests that don't go anywhere. Dong, and then she has a student because she becomes a rower because she's really good at rowing because there was this crank machine. She becomes a rower at Columbia University, but they just did that so she could be closer to her boyfriend, love interest, who was going to Columbia University. And as far as I know, they had like one rap scene, and then that's forgotten entirely. And in the beginning, Kimmy's character is like she's naive because she's been locked away from the world for 20 years and she got taken at like a crucial time in her development. But as the story goes along, she just becomes more and more stupid, you know. And I think that the cast does a wonderful job. So I didn't tell you who the cast is. The cast is Ellie Kemper. I mean, she played Erin Hannon in The Office. And Titus Burgess, he plays the character of Titus. More about him in a moment. Kane, she plays a landlord. And Jane Krakowski, she plays this person that Kimmy works for as a nanny, but then, she gets divorced and then she gets into her own adventures. And I think the so as I said, even though Al Kemper does a good job, her character is sort of hampered by the writing because I think that the show probably could have lasted one season and been fine, but Netflix sort of dragged it out. And then you have uh, Titus Burgess, and his character of Titus Andromedon is really funny. But it's basically the gay friend stereotype. And the best part about this show is that it has really absurdist humor sometimes. There's this one scene where Kimmy's character is being pursued by this rich guy, so he buys her a literal dolphin, and the dolphin is like standing, like it's being delivered, and there's like I don't know how they did this, but like they're carrying a dolphin on the city street, and he says something like, "Yeah, you might think that that would be cruel, but they can breathe air," and it's just a random little thing that's put in there. And then there's another bit where Titus basically he finds love in the second season with this Italian American construction guy, and he gets invited to Thanksgiving because his boyfriend is going to come out to his family, and there's like this Muppet of an Italian little grandma. Like it's literally a Muppet, and all the other characters are people. So it's those parts are great and really really funny. And Titus has some really like classic lines in comedy. I would say, like I think in the first episode, Kimmy asks him to do something, and he's like, because he's basically like this bum who has a lot of talent, but he doesn't apply himself, so he lives in this horrible apartment. And so Kimmy is like, "Oh, Titus, let's go do this," and he's like, "Kimmy, I've done one thing today." And I'm like, I understand that entirely. I understand the philosophy. And then he says something like, "I am a bed. I have become one with the bed," which is also great. But then as the series goes on, he of course becomes more and more. He's always an over the top character. Like he's the over the top gay diva trope. And then there's another scene later which kind of underlines the problem with this character is that one of Kimmy's people who was in the cult and locked in the compound with her, she starts her own cult because that's the only thing that she's good for, and their FBI is trying to get her out of this situation because she's kidnapped a bunch of teenage boys, and it's not really like, they're normal typical teenage boys, and she's going crazy, but they send in like an FBI agent who is like the gay best friend character stereotype. So they're literally like parodying the whole trope that this show is kind of using in Titus. And I think Titus is fun because Titus Burgess plays him in a great way. But I think that it becomes a little bit grating. Like I think that one season would be enough of that character because he is like over the top, but he's really one dimensional. I think another funny part about this is of the show is Jane Krakowski's character, and she plays a woman named Jacqueline White, and basically Jacqueline grew up. Her real name is Jackie Lynn, and Jackie Lynn White, and she's Lakota Sioux, but she's really quite an idiot, and she doesn't really understand her own culture. So that's kind of interesting, kind of dynamic, and you have great Native American actors who are playing themselves. I'm not playing themselves, but they're playing her family. So that part's good. And there's a whole scene, there's a whole plot about how they renamed the Washington Redskins into something that people like. So basically, the whole point that's a great joke actually. So Native Americans are protesting the Washington Redskins name, and so Jacqueline, her point is that you need something that will make more people angry because then they'll buy the jerseys and then they'll burn the jerseys. And I think that they end up renaming the Washington team to something like the Washington Gun Takers or something. So it's full of like really clever moments like this. And it does parody like sort of like the over progressive university students and that, but yeah, it just drags and it ends up not being enjoyable in the end because it's just a slog to get through. Basically, because Kimmy's character collapses and they forget how to write her because she's supposed to be a naive person, but not an idiot. And in the end, she becomes an idiot. And that doesn't have anything to do with the fact that she's been in this bunker. Like, she fails out of university, and because the university plot is just like a yes and like she's supposed to be on the rowing team, but you never actually see her rowing, you know. So it's a problem, and I think that I forgot. I should like write down the names of these YouTubers who I watch, but I watched a review by a Canadian YouTuber. Forgot what his name is, so I'm sorry, but maybe you could put it in the comments if you know who I'm referring to. And he made a video about how things don't end, and that's a problem in Hollywood. And like I think that Netflix is really criticized for ending series too early, and I think that's psychologically why. Like I think companies want to produce content as long as possible because then they get money from it. And he was referring to like all of these reboots and stuff. But I think that the Netflix is criticized because they will take original series and then they will just like give it a season or two and then it will die. But I think you need in the storytelling, you need to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And I think that sitcoms in like they're still trying to work out how to tell stories well in the streaming era. Because I think like a sitcom can't be like a sitcom in the 80s or 90s where it would just continue like every week and people would tune into it so the sitcoms could last 10, 15 years. Because, you know, you don't tune in every week to it. You have like you sit down and you watch maybe like 5 episodes, and then the next day you watch another 5, and then the story can end. And I think with I think maybe people criticized canceling this show after 4 seasons, but I think that Netflix already extended it far too long because they knew that they had a hit on their hands. But yeah, that's what I think. I think that it is enjoyable for the first couple of seasons. It's really funny and so absurd, and I really like that kind of humor. But I don't know. What do you think? Have you seen the Unbreakable? It's just Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt. And if you have seen it, please let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. And if you want to support me in this podcast, what you can do is you can subscribe to the YouTube channel or you can follow on Spotify. Trying to get to 500 subscribers by the end of March. And I believe last time I checked, I had 431 subscribers. So it's completely possible. So thank you, everybody, for your support. And yeah, thanks. Bye-bye.